Hi, I'm Jen Dawson. I'm the Associate Director of Education for the Pediatric Dermatology Research Alliance. And today we're doing something a little special. Dr. Powler and Andrea Rustad have come together to write an amazing children's book called Skin-Vincible, a story of a superstar with ichthyosis. This book is aimed at helping families and patients cope with bullying for children with ichthyosis. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Amy Powler. She's the chair of the Department of Dermatology and director for Skin Biology and Diseases Resource-Based Center, and the Walter J. Hamlin Professor of Dermatology at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. She's a co-founding member of PEDRA, a past PEDRA co-chair, and is co-author of the book we're discussing today. Her co-author is none other than Andrea Rustad. Andrea is a fourth-year medical student at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine, and she worked together with Dr. Powler to create this book. Well, thank you both so much for being here with me today for this sort of departure from our normal interviews, since we're not necessarily getting to know each of you, but we're getting to know a really big project you both worked on. So I think, Andrea, I'll start with you. Can you just give me some background? Like, how did this book come into being?
Yeah, I volunteered at Camp Discovery back in Minnesota, where I'm from, which is where I first met children and adults with ichthyosis. And hearing the stories that they shared with me really inspired me to want to get involved with research and advocacy when I started medical school and met Dr. Paller and the Foundation for Ichthyosis. And that really motivated me to want to do something that kind of drew on my creative and artistic interests, as well as a way to address bullying that children with ichthyosis face. So we came up with the idea to make a children's book, also because so many children had shared that they don't usually identify with positive characters in books and movies. So we wanted to kind of combine all of these to create a book that would raise awareness for ichthyosis while also providing positive media representation in a fun story that kids with or without ichthyosis could enjoy.
That's amazing. I love that you were inspired by your time at Camp Discovery. And how, Dr. Powler, where do you fit in the beginning of this book?
Well, I have to say that I think Andrea is the first student ever who came to our ichthyosis picnic, which we hold annually, before she even started medical school. And that was based on her experiences close to home of being involved in Camp Discovery. So an early commitment to pediatric dermatology because of that Camp Discovery experience. And there, of course, she met many other families and children, was able to start hearing more and more about the needs that these families have, and has ever since that time been involved with our team in terms of helping these families and also hearing a lot from these families and doing research as well, including particularly about bullying, to understand better what the needs are. I will also add that Andrea has been very proactive on many levels. She's already a speaker for the Foundation for Ichthyosis and Related Skin Types family conferences, talking about bullying and holding online sessions with families through that organization to really think about how we can help, how they can best advocate for their children.
You know, I can't think of a better match between Andrea's passion and creative side and Dr. Powler, your experience having just wrapped up and finished the PAMPEDRA study about stigma and bullying and the psychosocial impacts of skin disease in children. So it really seems fortuitous that the two of you would come together to collaborate on this book.
Absolutely. And if you remember, ichthyosis was one of the skin disorders that we see that came out with the highest degree of stigma associated.
Wow. Then this book is really hopefully going to do some really great work. So I want to talk a little bit about, like, how does a book like this, Andrea, you've had the idea, you were inspired, you've mentioned you're a creative person, but how do you get pen to paper? How do you make something like this happen?
It definitely took a lot of time and editing, and we wanted to make sure we were accurately representing the experience of those with ichthyosis and their families. So after I wrote a few drafts and put down some ideas, we got feedback from the Foundation for Ichthyosis and Related Skin Types and members, which was really helpful to really help us hone our story into what it now is today. So first, I kind of had just started with, how do we describe ichthyosis in a child-friendly way while explaining a little bit about how the skin works and then how it stops working correctly in ichthyosis in a way that kids will understand? So we went through a few different iterations to make this something that would be fun and understandable for children. And then also along the way, from getting input from the first board, people pointed out that we should make sure that it's not only educational, but also a story, because this way it's more fun for kids to read. Kids with ichthyosis can identify with the character versus just reading a story about something that they already know. So we changed the focus more to focus on the main character, Cece's kind of big day at school. She's going to be performing in a talent show. So along the way, you're learning about ichthyosis, but it's not necessarily the whole focus of the story, just like how it's not the defining factor of anyone who has ichthyosis.
I think one of the fun facts about this book is that the character names actually represent subtypes of ichthyosis. Andrea, you want to explain that?
Yeah. That was one of Dr. Paller's fun creative ideas too. So our main character is Cece, and she has CIE, or congenital ichthyosiform erythroderma type of ichthyosis, but we show different characters throughout the book with different types of ichthyosis, and throughout the process came up with different names for them that aren't necessarily all listed in the book, but we knew behind the scenes. For example, Epi was a character that has epidermolytic ichthyosis, or Lamar has lamellar ichthyosis. So we thought that was just kind of a fun creative touch.
That's very clever. So what are the goals? Let's talk about the overarching goals for both patients and families, and then beyond those in ichthyosis population.
We definitely really designed this with patients and families with ichthyosis in mind, but also really want to reach children and families with any sort of visible or functional difference as well. So with the illustrations, we were really conscious of including children with so many differences, such as vitiligo, different skin colors, a child in a wheelchair, all sorts of things to make any child who's ever felt different feel included and to know that this book is for them. We also have a section that talks about how to stand up to bullies, how to be a good friend. Really, it's just some messages that can be applicable to anybody. So I think that we are hoping that the message and the impact of this book goes beyond the people in the community with ichthyosis. And it's been really wonderful hearing from those with ichthyosis or other differences, how much this book has meant to them, to see someone who looks like them, who has experienced some of the same struggles in a book, has been really a wonderful, and that was our goal. So I'm really excited that it's already having this impact, but we hope that it continues to spread. Some of our next steps will be making an ebook version in French, Spanish, and Arabic, as well as hopefully an audiobook, so that we can reach even more people around the world and really help spread the message of ichthyosis awareness and anti-bullying, and just, being more kind, accepting, and inclusive of anyone with differences.
Wow. This book has also been a great vehicle for us in our offices to take out and show, particularly with any new patient with ichthyosis and potentially some of these other disorders as well that are represented in the book. Beyond that, though, we've heard from families that they've used this book as a vehicle to go into the schools and teach the other children in the classroom about ichthyosis, which is wonderful to hear.
I really love that, because that's one thing I've heard from other families as well is, the old adage where you carry a card with the description of what your condition or disease is, and then you can pass that out. And this is so much more meaningful, and it attaches so many important lessons to the experiences that not only the children with ichthyosis are having, but those around them too.
I love that Andrea also collected images, real photographs of children with ichthyosis sent in by their parents who wanted them to be in this book because it adds an element of reality and allows people to see not just the cartoons of patients, but also the what people really look like in pictures. The illustrator is fantastic here. This was not myself or Andrea doing the drawings, but somebody that worked with us. And we went back and forth a dozen times just to get the pictures of how the skin of patients looked right. And we really feel that we've captured that as best we can within a drawing by what's there.
Yeah, I really am glad that you brought up the illustrator, because I do think those images are so critical. And so it's great that the three of you were able to collaborate and really understand just how important this is. So one of my questions, and Dr. Paller, maybe you can speak to this, what kind of impact do you think this book will have from a research perspective? Do you think?
So I think there would definitely be a research impact with respect to clinical research related to the burden of ichthyosis and other skin disorders, because that's really what's central to this book. The fact that it has an impact on the child, on the children who interface with that child, on the family, and how one can take that and move that into a positive direction through teaching others about the disease process and through taking on a positive attitude, which is exactly what Cece does. She's a can-do girl. So I think this also can have an impact on engaging people in research. That's been a major problem. And if people are just thinking about themselves sometimes, they may not be as motivated as thinking about the whole ichthyosis community and the potential impact of research, particularly on children. And so you might have, for example, an adult who sees this book and says, you know, you're right. It may not have a huge impact on me, but it might have an impact on Cece if I engage in this research. I'm also hopeful that this book gets out to a broader audience in terms of the awareness of the burden of skin diseases for children, including particularly ichthyosis, and may lead to greater philanthropic support for doing research that can benefit these patients in so many ways.
Yeah, that was what I was wondering, if by shining a light on ichthyosis and bullying and these other skin disorders and diseases, that we might be able to increase awareness and therefore philanthropic support and get more funds pumped into research, or even into places like the Society for Pediatric Dermatology and for PEDRA, places that can really support research. So I think it's pretty exciting. So before we close, Andrea, why don't you tell us the title? We haven't said it yet.
This is Skin-Vincible, which is a fun pun with the skin as well as the resilience of those with ichthyosis. And we have our main character, Cece, who has congenital ichthyosiform erythroderma, or the CIE type. And it's written by myself and Dr. Paller, and the illustrator is Elena Louise, who was super wonderful and talented and worked with us so many times to really perfect the drawing of a cartoon version displaying the unique skin of ichthyosis, specifically the CIE type, as well as other types that are depicted in the story as well.
Andrea, where can people find the book?
So right now, the book will be launching on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles on January 10th. And it's also available on Mascot Books, which is the publishing company website. So we're really excited that it's going to be launching on a larger scale soon.
That's great. Well, congratulations to both of you. This is an amazing project. I know it's going to have a very positive impact for those families and patients with ichthyosis, and hopefully even the larger population as we talk about bullying and differences in our children. So thank you both so much. Thank you so much to Andrea Rustad and Dr. Amy Paller for taking the time to tell us about their book, Skin-Vincible. I look forward to following Cece's adventures once the book is available January 10th. You can find it searching mascotbooks.com. You'll also be able to order it on Amazon. Right now it's pre-order, but once January 10th hits, you'll be able to order it and have it delivered directly to you. Please use this book as a tool in your offices, share it with your patients, and let us know if you have any questions or comments at info@peterresearch.org.